Previously, Lin Moyu fought against the boss of the Shihai Mines dungeon, the Goblin King. After recognizing his weakness, their second round commenced. After a while of battling the Goblin King, Moyu eventually gained the upper hand in the fight. But the boss won't go down that easily as it jumped at such altitude and crashed back down, unleashing its skill called Shockwave. It then used fire breath on every skeleton around it, causing AoE damage. Before the skeletons died due to the fire, Moyu recalled them all and attacked the Goblin King with his Soul Fire skill, interrupting the boss from using the fire breath. While the boss was distracted, Moyu summoned the skeletons again and have them attack with their Berserk Strike skill. In a moment, the boss was vanquished and Moyu gained a massive 40,000 experience points which pushed him to level 12, as well as 3 item drops. The items were a bronze level weapon, a goblin sword, bronze level equipment, a wisdom robe, and a Goblin King's core. Among these pieces of equipment, only the wisdom robe was useful for him. It has an effective cooldown reduction of skill by 5% which wasn't that useful for Moyu, however, it also increased his spirit points by 10, hence he thought it wasn't so bad of a deal after all. As for the core, it was one of the quest items that he saw back in the Empire that rewards 10,000 gold. With this, the dungeon clearing has finished and it was about time to leave, but he did not forget to summon 4 new skeletons before going out since he leveled up recently, which replenished his spirit power. When Moyu arrived outside the dungeon, the players waiting for his return were crowding the entrance. They were shocked to see him alive after challenging the dungeon solo. Moreover, Moyu actually came out with a piece of equipment from the dungeon. How amazing was that? But Moyu did not bother with them and just thought about his leveling plans. The dungeon has a cooldown of 12 hours every after use per team. With this, he can only challenge the dungeon once every day. But he could care less since killing 10 mobs in the wild couldn't even compare to how much experience a monster from a dungeon gives. He took this chance to meditate and replenish his spirit power for the next dungeon run. After 12 hours of meditating, Moyu woke up with a replenished spirit power. With this, he can summon another 4 skeleton warriors to add to his army of undead knights. He stood up from where he was sitting for the last 12 hours and made his way to the portal. When he arrived there, players were arguing about something in front of the entrance. Players with uniformed armor were blocking the entrance to the dungeon, claiming that nobody will be allowed to enter since their guild leader was completing a task inside. These people were from a guild called Dynasty Guild. They were acting like they own the dungeon, depriving others of their right to enter the naturally occurring dungeon. However, when they were getting riled up because of anger, the man who was in front was attacked by one of the players from the Dynasty Guild, killing him in the process. This silenced the angry crowd out of pure terror and boosted their petty ego. Moyu just arrived on the scene and asked a nearby player about the situation. It seems like someone from the Dynasty Guild required a Goblin King's core, but the drop rate was very low. The core only drops in a nightmare dungeon and only once in 100 days. And that 100th day was today, apparently. According to the player, the quest for the Goblin King's core was put up by the Dynasty Guild. But that 10,000 gold was an understatement for what the core can give. If the core was made into a ring, the effect would be all of the attributes to be increased by 10 and all skill levels to be increased by 1. It can be used from level 15 onwards and was the strongest accessory to have below level 40. With this, the real market price for the Goblin King's core was around 30,000 gold. The one who needed it was the guild leader of the Dynasty Guild who was aiming for the Sha Jing Academy. With the gist of the situation, Lin Moyu left the player and headed to the entrance guarded by the people from the Dynasty Guild. Moyu wasn't afraid of these people. If they can't solo a nightmare dungeon, what's there to be afraid of? But ego can blind a weak person, much more when he was with his group. Nevertheless, the male player inspected Moyu and he saw that a level 12 rookie was messing around with them. But albeit at his low level, the male player was feeling uneasy about Moyu. Like a startled cat, he hissed at Moyu, warning him about taking one more step. But Moyu wasn't afraid of numbers. If they have a group, he has an army. When the Dynasty Guild players were ordered to kill Moyu, he sent his summoned skeleton to attack the male player, a level 25 mage named Zhao Ji. Zhao Ji quickly cast a magic barrier that could withstand 5 attacks from someone of the same level. But when the skeleton hit the barrier, it became cracked. The skeleton then readied for another attack, but this time, with Berserk Strike skill. Zhao Ji felt the danger and quickly activated a skill with a knockback effect, Fire Repulsion Ring. This bought him time and asked for help from his guildmates. A knight then dashed to bash the skeleton, but contrary to his thought of what will happen, he was the one who was sent flying back. Now they knew how terrifying the summon was. They switched their sight onto the summoner, Lin Moyu. 2 rangers from their group set their eyes on Moyu and shot 3 arrows each toward Moyu. In response, Moyu summoned 2 more skeletons to intercept the incoming arrows. Now, they were shocked. They were already having trouble dealing with that one skeleton, and now 2 more appeared. While Moyu was dealing with the 2 archers, Zhao Ji activated his ultimate skill, the Fire Serpent Dance. The onlookers were shocked as this was the strongest skill a level 20 mage which only one of 3 mages was able to learn. But as the fire serpent slithered its way toward Moyu, shadows already were rising from behind him. When the explosion occurred, everyone thought that Moyu was hit. But out from the fire, a horde of skeleton soldiers came dashing out. Now, the numbers the Dynasty Guild players were so proud has been watered down. But they will never back down. They stood their ground and faced the incoming swarm of skeleton soldiers. With the help of overlapping buffs, their confidence came back since monsters were unlike players who has real coordination. But they forgot to count Moyu as an enemy. Moyu was far from a flower summoner. He attacked one of the rangers with his soul flame. The ranger was suddenly lit on a ghostly fire. His guildmates were trying to heal him, but it has no effect, and eventually, the ranger died. One of them died even before the skeleton soldiers could even reach them. They began to be more alert of Moyu's movement, but alas, his unique hidden job has more advantages than disadvantages. Nobody knew what his skill was and what they do. The knight on the front activated his defensive shield, but under the siege of the skeletons with their berserk strike, it broke like a fragile glass. As it broke, a ghostly flame suddenly devoured the other knight beside him, making him the second victim of Moyu's soul flame. As for him, he was mutilated by the skeletons. Not for long, the entire Dynasty Guild players were engulfed in soul flame, killing them one by one. Zhao Ji can only look helplessly. He was a mage class, so he can't be fighting on the front line. But even the front line crumbled in a snap. How can he think of surviving fighting those abominations? He can only think of running and saving himself, but that was just a pipe dream. Moyu had his skeleton throw a knight's corpse toward Zhao Ji. He intends to use Corpse Explosion to deal with Zhao Ji in an instant. Corpse Explosion, after being enhanced by his talent, can deal 100% of the corpse vitality as damage. In simpler terms, with the knight having significantly higher HP than mages, exploding their corpse will instantly kill a mage. And with that, a guild party has been wiped out by a single, under-equipped, level 12 player. He did not forget to loot his spoil though. He quickly used his personal storage and gathered every piece of equipment they left. And as the saying goes, no trace no case, he exploded the remaining corpse, leaving no evidence behind but the trace of battle. With everything done, Moyu immediately entered the dungeon. 30 minutes after the one-sided massacre happened, a blonde man appeared outside the dungeon. He was the guild leader of the Dynasty Guild who went and barricaded the dungeon to get the Goblin King's core, but ultimately, he failed. The woman who was with them noticed that Zhao Ji and his crew were nowhere to be seen. They were supposed to guard the entrance, so how were they not here? But not just their guild members were missing, everybody who was crowding the dungeon entrance was also gone. After the fight, they ditched the area, afraid of what the guild leader of the dynasty would do to them just to know the situation. They might be killed to be silenced for all they know, so for the time being, the bustling Shihai Mines dungeon was deathly silent. Not knowing what happened, coupled with the eerie silence surrounding the entrance, the man decided to leave the area immediately. Meanwhile, inside the dungeon, Lin Moyu just killed the Goblin King of the Nightmare Dungeon. This time, a bronze-level weapon has dropped, the Goblin King's magic book. Apart from it, he acquired a low-level monster core. Though Moyu wasn't bothered by it, he already pocketed a Goblin King's core from before, so he only need to find a capable alchemist to make the ring. The magic book was a good find though, with 10 points in spirit power, 10 points in physique, and a 3% mage attack power increase. It was a very handy equipment for his soul flame and corpse explosion. Moreover, after this one dungeon dive, Moyu reached level 13. From here on out, the experience points he has to gather will increase significantly. With a limitation of 1 run per day, he can only dream of reaching level 16 before the entrance test. When Moyu arrived outside the dungeon, he found the place empty. He did not find it odd though and just left the place to rest for the day. The next day, Moyu visited the dungeon again for another round. But this time, someone he knew was present in the crowd. It was Xia Shui. She just reached level 10 and can now challenge Shihai Mine Dungeon. He noticed Moyu going in alone and she was quite shocked about it, but she has confidence that she can get into any party with her rare job, hence she thought she can clear the dungeon faster and more efficiently than him. 42 minutes later, inside the dungeon, Moyu was now facing the Goblin King once more. He already has 72 skeleton warriors in his arsenal, which was over 10 more than he started raiding this dungeon. It did not take him a while to defeat the boss monster and take his loot. This time, a bronze-ranked longbow dropped and no Goblin King's core still. He left the dungeon once more and returned after 12 hours has passed. The nightmare mode just became Moyu's private farm, while the Goblin King was his cattle to milk. This time, round, a bronze-ranked scepter dropped and no Goblin King's core still. Though, Moyu reached level 14 after this raid. Outside the dungeon, while Moyu was resting and meditating, Xia Shui arrived and called out to him. Her appearance was haggard and was in a mess as if she crawled on the dirt for days. While catching her breath, she asked Moyu about his current level. Moyu did not lie to her and told her that he was level 14. This caused shock to Xia Shui. She was just hit level 11 just now after clearing the dungeon 2 times. How was he so fast? After knowing their gap, Xia Shui's stubborn personality kicked in, and went back to the dungeon entrance to clear it once again. But Moyu was confused. Wasn't the dungeon on cooldown for her still since she just got out? An hour later and she cleared the dungeon once again, but she was still level 11, hence she went and looked for a party once again. 1 more hour and she was on the brink of collapsing, but when she heard another party was looking for one last member to dive in, she quickly announced her willingness to participate. Also, she was still level 11. 30 minutes later and she was in a mess. Though she was now level 12, but I doubt that was very efficient. She took 2 hours and a half just to level up once and she was now exhausted. Moyu can only watch her helplessly. When Moyu asked her about the reason why she was being so stubbornly competitive, Xia Shui told him that she doesn't want to be overshadowed by Moyu every time. Also, she was aiming for the Shaojing Academy. She has to give it her all if she wants to guarantee her admission. Moyu felt bad for unknowingly giving her reasons to push herself, so he told her to clear the nightmare dungeon instead so that she will level up faster. But Xia Shui wasn't sure about Moyu's advice. Only elite parties with levels around 15 to 16 were the only ones who can clear the nightmare dungeon. There was just no way an elite party would take in a level 12 rookie. Moyu then remembered something important. Without even a sign, Moyu changed his subject to how Xia Shui raids a dungeon multiple times within a day. Hearing his question, Xia Shui began teasing Moyu for not even knowing about that. She then showed him what looked like a pocket watch, which was called the cooldown talisman. This talisman will allow the user to reduce the cooldown for missions, which includes the dungeon reset time. While the talisman was very useful, this tool also comes with a cost. Yep, a cost, since it was astronomically pricey. She already used 3 charges of the talisman and she just leveled up twice. In each level up, the experience point needed will only get bigger and bigger. There were only 2 days left before the entrance test and she was still level 12, and what's more, she was dead tired. Yep, that's what you get. Though, this was a very good opportunity for Moyu. Unlike Xia Shui, he can only dive at most 2 times before the test, but that would only put him at level 15 at best. With this tool, he can level up to 16 before the exam, but he needs to bring the owner as well. Hence, Moyu decided to invite Xia Shui to join him in his dungeon diving. She will not be doing anything, she just needs to use the talisman. In this way, Moyu can guarantee that she will get to level 15 before the test. Hearing Moyu's proposal, Xia Shui agreed. With that, they will be clearing the dungeon in 2 hours, so Xia Shui took this chance to rest. After 2 hours of waiting, the both of them the entrance while Moyu was leading the way. Moyu chose the nightmare mode and dove right into the dungeon with Xia Shui. But she wasn't properly oriented with what Moyu was planning, hence she started to panic. But Moyu reassured her that it was alright and that she should stay close to him. Sha Shui has no choice but to believe in Moyu, and they started clearing the dungeon. There she saw how strong the summoned skeletons were. They were clearing out the elite monsters like some normal monster, and eventually, they met the Wolf King in just a moment. Sha Shui watched in horror as the elite goblins were being used as bombs by Moyu with his corpse explosion, while she too get to have her share of experience points. In an instant, the Wolf King they painstakingly deal with in normal mode was killed by Moyu without even moving. Now she knew how Lin Moyu get to level 14 so fast within a short time. It hasn't been 10 minutes since they entered the dungeon, yet they were facing the final boss already. What's more, the boss was also killed instantly in a similar manner to how the Wolf King died. As the Goblin King died, Moyu leveled up to 15, and now, their gap has widened again. Sha Shui did not bother to mull over it since she can't replicate what Moyu just did. She just turned her attention to the dropped items. The equipment that dropped this time was a longsword. Unfortunately, she can't use one. Without a second thought, Moyu gave the Goblin King's staff to Sha Shui. He already got the magic book of the Goblin King, which has the same stats and effects as the staff. Moyu then collected the drops into his personal storage. After so many times he has killed the Goblin King, he started to feel bad for the boss monster and apologized to it since he has to kill him 5 more times before this will be over. Sha Shui heard this and thought Moyu was weird but also a bit cute. On that note, Moyu and Sha Shui left the dungeon and will challenge it again. And so, they cleared the same dungeon 5 more times, which pushed Sha Shui to level 14 and Lin Moyu to 85% of level 15. Now, if they could clear the dungeon 1 more time, they might reach level 15 and level 16 respectively. With how fast Moyu levels up, Sha Shui thought that he could strive to be a provincial champion and rack up benefits, and if he gets lucky, he might be able to attend the Chuang Shen Academy. It was an academy much higher than Shajing. Since Chuang Sheng Academy only accepts the elites among the elites. The idea sounded pretty nice, but Lin Moyu wanted to attend the academy his elder sister was in, hence he could only put that thought aside for now. While they were discussing, Sha Shui spotted another familiar figure in the crowd. It was Gao Yang. He was busy looking for a party that he could enter, but he was unfortunate due to his low level. Currently, Gao Yang was still level 11. No matter how annoying Gao Yang can be, he was still a good classmate of Moyu, so he decided to bring him along for their next dungeon clearing. Meanwhile, somewhere inside an office, an older man in a suit and tie was reprimanding the guild leader of the Dynasty Guild. The barricading of the entrance wasn't part of the old man's plan. The association was against monopolizing the dungeons, hence he was mad at this young guild leader for dragging the whole guild with his selfishness. As for the missing party of Zhao Ji, he can only assign someone to investigate. For now, the young man was to sit still until the entrance test since he was already level 16. If something really did happen to Zhao Ji's crew, then whoever they might be were strong enough to even deal with their bodies. Back to the Shihai Mine dungeon, Gao Yang saw Sha Shui and Lin Moyu together and started teasing them. Moyu knew Gao Yang was just messing around, but Sha Shui was not having it. She then told him that they will form a party to clear the dungeon so he can stop looking for one. Gao Yang became very happy and started uttering nonsense, greatly pissing Sha Shui. Gao Yang stopped messing around and asked them about their cooldowns, and he received an answer of 10 hours. With that much time, he can go clear wild monsters while Moyu and Sha Shui will take a rest. But Gao Yang did not leave without teasing Sha Shui one last time. The pissed Sha Shui released a fireball toward the fleeing Gao Yang. Not that it will hit him. When 10 hours has passed, the three were now in front of the dungeon. Just like Sha Shui when he first went with Lin Moyu, Gao Yang was questioning them about the difficulty that they chose. Sha Shui disregarded Gao Yang's worry, as she was also like this from the start. She only told him to just follow them and not do anything stupid. Before Gao Yang could even protest, they were teleported inside the dungeon in nightmare mode. The two of them were walking behind Moyu while Gao Yang was cowering in fear behind Sha Shui. Not for long, Moyu finished the Goblin King with his corpse explosion. This scene greatly shocked Gao Yang. How can a boss monster of a nightmare dungeon die instantly? That was preposterous. This just shows how powerful Lin Moyu was, and this cemented Gao Yang's resolve to stick to Moyu in future dungeon raiding. Moyu submitted to Gao Yang's pestering and agreed that in the future, he will bring him along. But I think Gao Yang already forgot how Moyu left him behind the day after the novice leveling dungeon. As they were being teleported out of the dungeon, Moyu was thinking of challenging the dungeon one last time to get Sha Shui and Gao Yang to level 15 and level 12 respectively. After that, they will only have to wait for the entrance exams. Back in Shihai City, figures can be seen standing at the top of the walls. They were the respective principals of every academy in Shihai City. They were waiting for their students who left the walls and into the wilderness to level up. Every one of them was aspiring to enter Shajing Academy, hence they were the most outstanding students each academy has to offer. While they were discussing themselves, the other principal saw someone approaching. It seems someone has returned. The first one to arrive was a man named Xu Zheng, a level 12 swordsman. He was from the Shihai's 3rd academy. The second one to arrive was from the 2nd academy of Shihai City, a level 13 Hawkeye archer, Wan Ming. When the two arrived, the 2nd and 3rd academy principals began comparing each of their students. Not for long, another batch of people arrived, 3 students to be exact. Liu Yun was delighted to see these 3 figures. They were level 12 Knight, Gao Yang, level 15 Elemental Mage, Sha Shui, and level 16 Necromancer, Lin Moyu. Everyone was already shocked to see Sha Shui's level, but when they saw Moyu's level, they were in disbelief. Moreover, the equipment they were carrying was obviously from the Goblin King's drops. They knew full well how low the drop rate was for the equipment, yet they actually have 2. Liu Yun doesn't have any more to add to the kids' improvements, and all he could do for them was bring them back home to rest. The next day, Moyu, Sha Shui, and Gao Yang met in a lobby for the exam. They each held a crystal that would teleport them to the examination venue. After some brief reminders from Liu Yun, the 3 then activated their respective crystals and they disappeared in the 1st academy. The next thing Moyu saw was that they were gathered in an open place with other examinees. Suddenly, a tower rose from within the land and a door opened. They can hear a voice telling them that the Tower of Trials has been activated. They then told them to not speak while they were explaining the rules or they will be immediately disqualified. However, 2 examinees still talked with one another and were caught, hence they were immediately booted out of the venue. The speaker explained that each student will be assigned a dungeon corresponding to their class. This means that the combat class will be assigned to a dungeon in which they have to be in combat, while support classes will be in a non-combat dungeon. Once they pass the first test, they will then be able to choose the difficulty for the next dungeon, and the harder the difficulty was, the greater the points that could be earned. These points will represent their result, which they can use to get into the academy that they wish to attend. Also, inside the dungeon, any equipment a student brought will be allowed to be used. However, using tools, like a talisman, will not be allowed. If someone decides to not follow the rules, they will be disqualified. After explaining the contents and rules of the exam, the students then lined up to enter the dungeon. While every student was getting transported to their respective dungeons, the facilitators of the exam were discussing the new class that popped up today, a Necromancer. The reports they gathered showed that it was like a summoner class, hence they considered him as one. However, they still treated his class like one of the rare classes and set the monsters 2 levels above him. Moyu entered the dungeon and saw a monster in front of him. It was inside a barrier, so he can't check any more details other than its name and class as a wolf beast summoner. Nevertheless, Moyu readied his skill, Soul Flame. He aimed at the summoner monster, and once the countdown was done, he released it. In turn, the monster died right after the countdown ended. The elapsed time was 0.1 seconds. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this. And see you in the next video. Have a wonderful day.